Good morning and welcome back to Coffee Break with the Florida Senior Living Association. We're going to have a great day today. We have a few folks that have joined us. Tricia Cole from ALIS by Medtelligent and Ashley Guido, who is the Chief Clinical Officer with SEAL Senior Living. ALIS by Medtelligent is a purpose-built electronic health record and operation software. And it's designed exclusively for assisted living facilities, memory care, and independent living communities. And they've been around for about 20 years. And so they've faced very specific challenges and specific challenges that operators face, from clinical compliance to billing to staffing. They've built this platform that ties it all together. And so please welcome the Chief Operating Officer of ALIS, Tricia Cole.
Hello.
Hi, Tricia. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you have your coffee in hand. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. So what's different about assisted living as an operating environment compared to skilled nursing or other care settings?
Yeah, the two main differences are linked. One is that assisted living is 80% private pay and regulated state to state. So as opposed to skilled nursing facilities that are paid with money from CMS and that are federally regulated, assisted living is complex in the sense that you have to know each state's regulations, be familiar with what is required in each state. And then also on top of that, assisted living is three very complex companies in one. You have your clinical piece, you have your hospitality and dining piece, and then you have your rental piece. So it's a little bit different than, kind of the short stays at a skilled nursing facility. So just a little bit more nuanced environment there.
Yeah, definitely. And there's no shortage of solutions in senior living. So there's, you have a system for clinical, a system for billing, a system for CRM, all of it. So why did ALIS decide to build one platform that covers all of it? And what does that mean for an operator?
Yeah, well, originally ALIS fell into it a little bit. ALIS, originally the name stood for many years ago, Assisted Living Integrated Solution, and that's kind of morphed to Assisted Living Intelligent Software because we used to be always internally integrated, and now the key is being integrated with the entire technology ecosystem. So an all-in-one exists for your major systems now, unless people want kind of a best-of-breed approach. And so the approach that we took in the past, 3 to 5 years is really being one platform to make sure that we're collecting and consolidating data for things like, business intelligence, for artificial intelligence, machine learning projects. But the nice thing is with a true interoperable platform, you can plug in any best of breed solution that you like, your best pharmacy that you like. If you want to use a CRM outside of our system, totally good. It's more about how do you consolidate and normalize the data to eliminate the duplicative data entry that's happening in the building. And for assisted living, the EHR, the clinical piece, the assessment is really the core of everything, even from billing, making sure the right residents are moving in, making sure the right residents are staying, and that you're billing the right amount. So we focused all of that around the electronic health record.
That's great. And, operators today are under a substantial amount of pressure. We're struggling with thin margins, staffing challenges, and just constantly staying up with state compliance requirements. How does technology actually help with that, and where might it fall short?
Well, it can help if the systems talk to each other, number one. That's where, still the assisted living industry is still young and is trying to mature on that front. How do they talk to each other? Is there cost associated with that? Making sure that a perfect example for people to wrap their heads around is how many times are you entering resident or staff data, right? Watching that as a KPI, like right now we're entering resident data in 6 different systems, or honestly, our clients have about 20 to 30 different technologies technology systems. How many can you get to where if you enter it in ALIS, for example, or into your payroll system, can it disperse that to all the other pieces of your technology ecosystem? So that's where it can really help you or hurt you. And I would say on the hurt side, it's really when promises are made that are misunderstood or not backed up. An example I use for this is people will often ask me, are you integrated with XYZ? When really people don't understand enough about integration to know, is this an API integration? Is it a file drop integration? Is it, kind of behind the scenes? And that those things matter to where people don't get bamboozled by technology companies saying, yeah, so, of course we do that. So it can fall short if what's expected in people's minds doesn't match up to what the technology is capable of at the cadence that it needs to be done.
Makes sense. We recently saw that ALIS released ALIS 500 clinical report. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, very, very cool. So we have ALIS. So ALIS 500 is a group of communities from across the country that represent, small communities, larger portfolios, and those buildings have, very clean data. So we use those to benchmark. We started with occupancy information, basic age information, acuity information, kind of where people were trending there. And then the second piece that we did was the clinical, looking at comorbidities, what kind of clusters of diagnoses are we seeing? What's the correlation between, product type is what we call it, but memory care and diagnoses or comorbidities and length of stay. So the first of we know of its kind on the clinical side, looking at that data, and Ashley has a copy of that, send it over to her kind of first thing. But we're just kind of trying to get our head wrapped around also what's normal in terms of how many incidents per 1,000 resident days, how many PRNs are being administered, like really trying to give back to the industry about, hey, here's what we're seeing. And then also our personal mission here is how do we move the dial on that? How do we extend the length of stay, both in quality and in quantity? So we use that data, kind of feed it back, get feedback from our clients, put it back into our product. So these things are just living in a nice reciprocity relationship.
It's amazing. And this has always been a thing in senior living, but it's a very emotional moment for families that are going through this transition with their loved ones. And so that makes communication incredibly important, that they are, always able to, communicate, for lack of a better word, communicate with their loved ones. How does ALIS support that communication and interaction between loved ones?
Yeah, I would say my background is legal too, so I always have a risk hat on, which Ashley knows, but I would say what ALIS does is actually support all the stakeholders in the way that's appropriate for them. So operators are really balancing risk and, litigious situations versus the desire to be very open and honest and transparent with families. Families are also balancing, wanting information, but not necessarily wanting to be charged for extra time given for communication. So making sure, we have a family portal that residents or their families can access information about, their bill or social posts or get newsletters. And that's been very helpful for the communities, and our communities actually publicize that to their families. And then making sure that the operators have the ability to have pretty granular controls over, what is happening with that relationship. Just because of the staff turnover, it's incredibly important that the policies and procedures are very clear and in place. And I can give a very good example of this, which is you have a messaging application where the family can message the community. Who's in charge of receiving that communication? Because it could be anywhere from dining to clinical to their rent, right? Who's responsible for receiving and routing that to make sure there's good customer service back? So we see the communities and portfolios really trying to evolve to support that kind of real-time interaction, but it's not easy with the staffing challenges, but there are the technology tools available now to help kind of bridge the gap there.
Wonderful. That's always important. And we mentioned earlier, Tricia is joined today by one of ALIS's partners, Ashley Guido, the Chief Clinical Officer of SEAL Senior Living. Ashley brings a clinical leadership perspective to the game as a registered nurse with graduate degrees in nursing and business admin, as well as certification in dementia care. She sits at, the perfect intersection of care quality and operational performance. We're glad to have her today. So Ashley, could you give us a little background, a little brief overview of CL Senior Living and what led you to ALIS?
Yeah, so that's actually a funny story. Trisha's probably laughing right now. So a little background on CL. Myself, Alexis Martini, Jordana Joban-Putra, and a number of other senior leadership members came over here a few years ago, various stages in the last 3 years. We all worked together in the Sunrise days, Morningstar days, came over to CL because we believed in what Ron Junot and Ed Burnett were doing with the organization. So previously known as Park Avenue Lifestyle, did a rebrand that first year in 2023. I actually met John and Trisha and their team over there at ALIS in my previous organization when we were doing an acquisition up in Washington. And that community had ALIS, and at the time we were using a different EHR system. We were using PCC, a very commonly known one in the senior living space, more geared towards skilled, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. And in order to try to figure out how to get that community to transition from ALIS to PCC, I did a demo. And by the time I was done with the demos with Bill, Carrie, and Owen, who are still there working alongside Trisha and her team, I ran across the hallway to my boss's office, to Alexis' office, and I said, what if we didn't switch this building to PCC, but what if we switched the other 30 to ALIS? Can we do that? Because I was so enamored with the product, the software, the intuition that it had, the scaling and the growth, and what was on the product roadmap for the ALIS team. So that's ultimately how I came to know and love ALIS. And then, of course, so when Alexis and I came over to CL Senior Living, project number one was transitioning all of those existing homes to ALIS. And so everyone that we've brought on either through new development or acquisition has undergone an ALIS transition.
That's incredible. And, it's something we said with technology, there's always going to be a need for support on the back end for users that are actually using the software. So how does ALIS assist in those certain situations?
Yeah, so you get a dedicated account executive. You get somebody that really gets arm in arm with you throughout your ALIS journey, from the time of implementation and data entry to the training calls. ALIS's team has been so gracious. They come right on site. Work alongside the frontline team members at the community, put the devices in their hands, show them, how this displays for the end user, all of its functionality. And you're working with the same people week over week. You don't have, 37 different tiers of layers of product support. It's jot down an email, send it out to your account executive. There's always a backup, but you come to know the same small, intimate group of people that are there to support you along the way. Even, year over year, I'm still working with the same folks I was 5 years ago. Although through promotion and stuff, they might be in different roles, but still working with that same wonderful group of individuals. And for the community leadership, that's huge because they're not spending their time on hold. They're not putting in a ticket and waiting 2 days for somebody to get back to them to answer their question. They're getting real-time customer service and solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. The turnover in the staff, and then the turnover, and it's very good to see a familiar face all the time. And we're talking about ALIS being the connecting piece for clinical and operational data. What does it mean for your frontline clinical staff that they can depend on ALIS for this?
Oh, it's huge. So they're getting real-time updates. When we make a change to the service plan, it's immediately going to the care tracking situation for the frontline team members. So they know in real time what has changed with that resident. They're able to put in clinical alerts to let us know that there has been a change. We rely on them to be the eyes and the ears. And so they've got that technology and they've got that communication and they've got that information and those real-time updates right at their fingertips.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does it mean for compliance and survey readiness?
Same thing. We're getting the real-time updates. Survey comes in, they pull a resident sample list, they go and take a look at the resident and they say, hey, something's not right. This doesn't match up with the service plan. That doesn't happen with ALIS. ALIS has some intelligent software intuition built into it to let you know when your staff are charting more PRN tasks, when they're logging more time that it takes to complete a certain task. It's letting the community leadership know, hey, there has been a change. It's flagging them, alerting them, sending up the smoke signals saying you've got to do a change in condition. And so it helps keep us in regulatory compliance. Beyond that, the technology and the build out and the integration, the systems integration, ALIS does a wonderful job of building out so that we're not creating redundancy for state-specific reports and forms where regulators are coming in and they're asking for this form. 10 years ago, or if you had another EHR system, you're relying on a manual process to update those reports and those forms in real time. ALIS does a great job with their tech and their implementation people behind the scenes. They're back there mapping where does this information already exist in your service plan or your assessment, and they're pulling it from those different components of it and creating your custom report so that you can be in substantial regulatory compliance. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's almost an invaluable asset to give your leadership confidence, and that's something that you can't let slip by. So I have one last question.
Sure.
Was there a specific moment where having the right tools made a measurable difference for you?
Yes. I mean, there's so many examples. ALIS has come to the rescue many times for regulatory compliance. One of the great things about ALIS is they stay on the up and up. Tricia mentioned part of the cumbersome responsibility of running an assisted living versus CMS is you have to learn all the different states' regulations versus just one federal set. And so ALIS does a great job of partnering with us to making sure we're staying in substantial compliance. And so when there are new reporting requirements, new templates that come out, state-specific forms, ALIS is on top of it. And they're one step ahead of the game, building that out for us. They've already got a plan to launch it and implement it to really create some streamlined efficiency at the community level. Another one is they are extremely well versed. I know I've given Tricia my fair share of workload on the transition side. So when you're doing a transition or a change in management from one management company to another, which we have tons of experience with, you're on a tight timeline. You can't get too far ahead because it's not quite your building yet, but you want to make sure that the team is teed up and ready to go on ALIS on day one. And so her team is extremely thoughtful, and they're positioned well to be able to tackle all of the tasks that come with doing an EHR transition. They're well versed in implementation and integration with the pharmacy, whatever pharmacy exists at that community. They've got it down to a science. And so it's been monumental in, I know myself at the senior leadership level, it's been huge. And I know that it's reduced and eliminated a lot of headache for the end user at the community. So I can't say enough good things about complex situations that they've made uncomplex.
Tricia, your ears must be burning by this point.
I mean, no, it's at the end of the day, our company's mission is to leverage technology to solve real world problems. And that means dealing with people and helping people. And so, I always say I go into a community and I see ALIS on a screen and I still catch my breath, right? Because we live in Chicago, we work out of Chicago, it's where our headquarters are, but I get to spend a lot of time on the road and the communities, and just hearing that it, actually helps people and makes life easier is very energizing for our team, and just wants to, have them help more and more and produce more and more great products. So it's always great to hear, and Ashley and her team are great partners for us.
We love it. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us for a cup of coffee. Be sure to get a refill. We're excited about the next one. We appreciate Tricia and Ashley joining us. This has been a great session. Great cup.